So we've spent all this time saying, okay, in order to figure out what your strategy is, you got to start, Mike Beer says, with a clearly defined business problem. We define what problems are. You have to take a stakeholder's point of view, make sure you understand all the want-got gaps. But then, wait a minute, there's a big problem with problems. And the problem is that you're living outside in. You're letting the world set your agenda. If you were living inside out and you had a vision of what you wanted to create, what's happening in the world around you would be important, but not necessarily the primary focus of what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. So let's explore that and see how this works. The problem with problem solving is oscillation. Robert Fritz wrote this interesting book called The Path of Least Resistance, in which he argued that when you recognize a problem, you begin to focus on it. This leads to a lessening of the severity of the want-got gap. It leads, therefore, because the symptoms have declined, to less attention, and the problem remains. You get a false sense of security. So then when it gets worse, you go back and spend more time on it. When it gets better, you don't pay attention to it. It's a reactive way of thinking where you are allowing the things that are happening in the world to drive your agenda. It's an outside-in way of living. We'll talk some more about that in a moment. This reactive oscillation can be illustrated in a number of ways. So consider if you're hungry, you have a want-got gap. You don't want to be hungry, and so in order to lessen that gap, the way you deal with that is you eat. We all know that the feedback loop between stomach and brain is around 20 minutes. So because of that, we tend to eat a little bit too much. And when we do that, we begin to feel heavy. And when we feel heavy, we say, oh, I don't like this. Ugh, I got to stop. So we eat less. And when we eat less, we begin to feel hunger, and we go back to this oscillation again. So you can see in the center here, we have almost an infinity loop taking place where we can go around and around and around in this loop, oscillating back and forth, even though it's not hunger that we're dealing with. Maybe it's organizational design. So I've got one client who made a big effort to change their organization from one structure to another, spent 3 or 4 years doing this. New leadership came in, and the new leadership said, we're going to go back to the structure we had before, and then we went back the other way. Can you imagine the impact that these organizational oscillations had on the energy level of the employees in this company? Enormous drops in morale and rise in confusion, frustration, annoyance, lack of coordination. It was a major challenge. So if you've worked in an organization where you've seen this kind of oscillation, we go from one focus to another focus and back to the other focus, and all the while energy is being consumed. So we could illustrate this by showing that sometimes people want to centralize or decentralize. Maybe they want a customer focus versus a geographic focus. Sometimes they think, well, we have to grow, and other times they say, wait a minute, we're growing too fast. We have to slow down and consolidate. Sometimes they say, well, maybe in order to grow, we need to acquire other organizations, and then they'll go back to, no, wait a minute, we've acquired so much now, we need to manage the internal organic sales growth in each of these acquisitions. Some people will say, well, we need to diversify in order to grow, and then others will say, no, we need to get back to the fundamentals and stop trying to do things we don't know how to do. And back and forth, we get this oscillating behavior.